Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to welcome you to this wonderful program of ours, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It's always a thrill to have a new guest who's coming to empower us and with life-changing information that you can use and apply in your life as an entrepreneur. And one such person this week is Patricia Nkwane. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Be kind enough just to indicate your background and your professional area, professional competence.
Yes, first of all, like you mentioned, my name is Patricia Nkwane. I'm an international transformational speaker. I'm also an academic excellency coach. And then part of what I do is contact production. I have a TV talk show that was running on Maru TV called Woman to Woman. Currently, I'm also working with So Online Radio with a radio program called The Patricia Nkwane Show. So basically, I'm all about transformation.
I can call you a transformation specialist.
Transformational coach, yes.
Yeah. How long have you been in this field?
I would say I've been in the field for almost 4 years now. Almost 4 years now, but coming from a background of computer science, I studied in computer science. But along the way, I think during my time of studying computer science, I just realized it wasn't for me. I'm much of a talker, I'm much of an engager, a transformer than much of an IT person. So it wasn't that for me. And then it happened that around my time of study, I came across a gentleman called Dr. John DeMartini. He's part, if you know of their book, The Secret, he's part of the authors of The Secret. So
I've met him personally.
Yeah, I attended
I've met him personally. I'm just telling you, I know him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I attended one of his seminars, and he was sharing his story.
He's written a book, how I met him. He's written a great book called How to Go to Heaven and Still Make a Hell of a Profit.
Hell of a Profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was busy sharing his story, busy doing his motivation there. And as much as he kept talking, it felt like he was just sharing my story. So what I kept wondering is how is somebody living a life by doing this? Because it felt like he was doing something that was meant for me. So after that, we had a conversation. I was like, what exactly do you do? He's like, I'm a speaker. I'm like, can somebody live by speaking? He's like, yes. I'm like, but I love this. This is what I want to do. So I think at that point in time, I just divorced IT automatically and then went into trying to find my way into public speaking. So that's where
When did you meet DeMartini and when did you now become a public speaker?
We met in 2013 and then around 2014, I started doing some motivations in schools. And then after that, right after my graduation in 2015, during my graduation, I got a job.
That's when you graduated as an IT person?
As an IT person, yeah. I got a job at State Bank of India. And during my time in the bank, I just felt unfulfilled. I just felt empty. Like I was waking up.
I know the feeling. You want to.
I was waking up to nothing.
You want to talk.
Yeah. So after that, 2016, I quit my job at State Bank of India. And then I tried finding different kind of things that I could do. And then eventually I ventured into public speaking.
And how did you become an international transformation speaker? Is that special training or just experience?
I did a bit of trainings with Toastmasters, but I would say for me, it was on personal experience because I started off just with going around with speakers. I would carry their bags, I would sit in their conferences, I would listen. I remember by the time I just decided I can do this, I could recite Moshe Soloko's talks, I could recite Manswanin's talks, and I just from there, that's when I started doing my talks around the country, and eventually I started getting invitations outside the country. So basically, that's how I got to go.
You mentioned Manswaneng. She's a highly respected speaker. Tell me about your involvement with her.
I met Manswaning at Diamond. She was part of the Diamond Speakers. Diamond Speakers is an organization that was started by Moshe Soloko. So after being a mentee of Moshe Soloko for a while, I started engaging with the David Grays, the Manswanings, and all that. So basically now I got a chance to get to sit in their talks. I think for me it was more of a learning curve where I get to see what they do, so I could learn how to do that.
While trying to discover your own...
My path, yeah.
Okay. In terms of your keynote speech, what do you normally cover, or what do you deal with?
We are basically more about organizational transformation. Yes, and we have a program that is on organizational transformation that we call Beauty in the Brokenness. I also do women empowerment. I have a program that is now currently running outside around Africa that I call there's Beauty in the Brokenness and there's Women with Scars. Women with Scars is a healing program for women. So.
And can you introduce the subject, which is what we're going to talk about, which is beauty in the brokenness? Can you just help us understand what influences the thinking behind this and what it's about before we unpack it?
Yes. Beauty in the Brokenness is a program that I started. There was a statistic that was done, I think that was in 2017, 2016, where Botswana was actually ranked top 5 of the saddest nation in Africa. And a lot of people thought that was wrong. And personally, I thought that was right. And then there was an incident where we had people swimming by the parliament and doing a lot of things.
Doing
and
what?
There was a guy that went swimming by the parliament. And a lot of people felt like, yeah, no, it's just a joke. But we come from a nation where we learned how to cement our pains. So much that when we now blot out, we come to react in different ways. So I consider this, I was like, but there's just a lot of brokenness that is there here that needs to be dealt with. There's just and one thing that people should notice is it's impossible to make a good decision coming from a heart that is filled with hurt. A bleeding heart can never make better decisions. So one way or the other, a heart needs to be aligned in order for it to operate the way it's supposed to. So basically that is where Beauty in the Brokenness came about.
And then I see from your bio that you've appeared in Zimbabwe TV, Botswana TV. Tell us about that aspect of you. What is that? What are you doing with televisions?
Oh, okay. I had an opportunity. I was in Zimbabwe. I had an opportunity to give a motivational talk on ZBC, Zimbabwe National Television, where I had to address the beautiful women of Zimbabwe on my program, The Women with Scars, which is basically a healing program. And after that, we also had an interview on Power FM to do the same, but in Power FM, it was more of Beauty in the Brokenness, because now they wanted me to include men, because I think what they had mentioned was they had a high rate of suicide, of men committing suicide in Zimbabwe. So they were like, what needs to be done? I was like, okay, but I have something that could help you. So after that also I had some interviews where I got to talk about a few of my programs in Botswana television, did a few interviews with the Bob Radio in South Africa, did a few interviews in Ghana, Nigeria, and Botswana, yeah.
Okay. You physically went there or it was online?
The Bob Radio, it was online because it was during the COVID time. But as for others, it was when I had visited the place.
All right. Now we're going to just get into the heart of it. But before you do, you said you have a program on BTV. What's it called and when is it accessible?
It's Maru TV, not BTV.
Sorry.
It's Maru TV, not BTV. Currently, Maru TV is not airing. It's not airing, but it was on every Monday. It's a program called Woman to Woman. It's also there on YouTube. Our YouTube link is just Patricia Nkwane.
Okay, and Woman to Woman is also to do with brokenness, or?
It's about sharing stories of resilience.
Okay. Let's start. You can't make good decisions when you are coming from a bitter heart. Bitter heart. Is that why? Is it tied with you saying Botswana are the saddest, the number 5 saddest from the bottom?
It's part of that. We are engaged in organizations. We are engaged in companies, in churches. But you look at the basis of it, there is no way you're going to make a good decision while you're still bleeding from within. Because as much as it is, hurt cannot define something in you. And a lot of times that's where you get to find a person, a pastor, for example, if I could give, a pastor that is always angry and somebody is wondering what's wrong with it. Some people feel like, okay, maybe it's the move of the Holy Spirit, but the person is bleeding. And an employee that is always angry about something, and we name them, we call them all sorts of things. They're bleeding about something. So we just thought about it. We thought there's something that needs to be corrected.
So how do you move away from the bitterness?
You move away from the bitterness by healing. And healing means you first have to acknowledge that there is a problem.
And do you help people discover the problem, or you just talk about it and reveal it to them?
We help people discover. We do one-on-ones where we get you to discover your problem, your root problem. And from the root problem, then after that, you get to acknowledge it and we get to go to the healing. Okay.
No matter how strong you are, if you have a series of hurts and pains, it's going to affect you. Because I've seen some people say they're tough, especially men. We are taught to be tough.
No matter how strong you think you are, a series of hurts and pains, losses, would affect how you view the world around you. Regardless of whether you are a man, regardless of whether you are who, a series of losses would definitely affect how you view the world around you.
Yeah, but what after making that statement, then what?
I think that statement came about from my own personal view and my own personal life. To say, I've always been the kind of kid that had myself defined. Only to get to a point where all of a sudden you are an orphan, all of a sudden you've been relocated, all of a sudden you stay in a village, all of a sudden there seems to be an event after event of hurts and pains. And most of the time when events comes of hurts and pains come around, they kind of shift. We go wrong when things go wrong. We tend to lose ourselves in the moment. And sometimes you might think, okay, fine, I'm not the kind that cries out loud. I'm not the kind but that silence, one way or the other, it starts to create a void in you. And that void, eventually you start filling it up with something else. It might be alcohol, it might be sleeping around with women, it might be anything, it might be too much work. We are covering it with something.
You speak with so much passion. Is this something you've experienced personally, or it's a lot of your clients who are gone through this?
I think listening to so many stories and also having a story of my own.
How does this tie in with your own story?
It ties in a bigger way. Most of my programs come from my own experiences and my own healing procedures. I'm one person that don't believe in sharing with you what the book says, but me having to experience it. At one point in time, if I can mention, one point in time, I was said to be dyslexic, couldn't read or write.
Who said that? Such a super...
I was said to be dyslexic. Standard 3,
obviously.
At standard 3, I couldn't read or write the words that a standard 1 could write. I did my primary school in 9 years. And then from primary school to my form 2, I lost my parents. relocated to stay with my auntie, which came about
in the rural areas.
In the rural areas, which came about with a lot of forms of abuses. And then all of a sudden coming down to living on government baskets, coming down to dropping out of school, coming down to being a teenage mother at a very young age, and coming down to be homeless at one point in my life, and coming all the way down to a lot of other things. But I often say, as much as it is, we are not defined by the many times we've fallen, like they often say. Because all of it leads all the way up to the young woman that graduated into tertiary, graduated top of my class, graduated top of all the four campuses of Botswana University.
Wow.
And you look at it,
Congratulations.
it's just a shift. And a shift of acknowledging your pains and finding a way through your pains.
Yeah, that segues nicely into our next point. Our biggest public health problem here in Botswana and in Africa is the trauma that the tiny little things that happen to us that we are reluctant to talk about.
Yeah, I often say our biggest public health problem, I would say here in Botswana, but I noticed it's the same all across Africa, to many countries that I've been to. It's not the TB they talk about, it's not the HIV, and sorry, it's not even corona. Our biggest public health problem is trauma. And when I talk about trauma, I don't mean big traumas like growing up in a poverty set up country, or growing up in a war zones of the Eritreas, or growing up in the stories of Nigeria. No, the tiny little things that nobody ever gets to sit with you and ask you, how did you feel when you get bullied in school? How did it feel when your parents got divorced? How did it feel? Because as much as those may not leave a mark in our body, they affect how we view the world around us. And they even affect the person we become in the long run.
Do you think as a community or society we are collectively suffering from PSTD?
As a community, we are. There is just a circle that is a vicious circle that has been carried on.
For those who don't know, that's post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes, there's a vicious cycle that is carried on because for some reason, as a society, we have normalized certain things. You know, you behave like this. We don't call it any. We just say no. It's normal. That's how they are in their family. The depression happens in their family. We say, no, in their family they get mad. It's just something that happens. We don't actually sit down and find the root cause of something and find a way of healing through it.
And what do you think should be done if this is now a continental problem?
One way or the other, the vicious cycle has to be broken. But the only way we can break it is individuals that are intentional to come out for their healing. People that are willing to actually say, you know, this has been the thing in my family. I just need to change it. I just need a better me. I just need to experience a better life and a different life. Somebody who is intentional enough, that's the person that can break the vicious cycle. Because when you heal, then you become an example of possibility of healing to them that are looking.
Tell me how you dealt with it. You said you suffered quite a bit of trauma yourself. How did you experience healing?
I think for me it was at the point where I felt like I had reached my rock bottom. It was where I was at my own version of rock bottom. At that point in time,
after having a child.
Yeah, at that point in time, what had happened was I found myself in that little room with my son there. 17 years, you'd think a 17-year person doesn't know much about kids. But at 17, I found myself in that little room with that baby, crying non-stop. I couldn't stop the child from crying. I tried everything that I could. In a bit, we were both crying in that room. You know, and I think at that moment, a question just came to my head to say, is this it? Like, is this all there is in life? And as that question popped in my head, it just provoked a lot of other questions. You know, what will happen if I decide to go differently? What will happen if I decide to stand up and go fight for something else? And I would say at that point in time, me deciding to get up from that, it wasn't for me to go change the world, but I was on a quest of finding a name for myself. A title that wouldn't say I'm just an orphan. A title that wouldn't say I'm just a school dropout. I'm just a single mother, but something that added meaning to Patricia. And I can proudly say, yeah, I've managed to find that. But the good thing about finding that portion of identity, of identifying yourself with a bigger something, is you keep going. When you get the title, you thirst for something else. When you get something, you thirst for something else. And as you go on the journey of a quest, normally in a quest they say you find something, but in a quest you find yourself.
Wow. That is quite a mouthful. I'm actually moved by that. That's very, very touching. Do you know that your story is similar to that of Lisa Nichols? Have you heard of Lisa Nichols?
Lisa Nichols.
Yeah.
I know Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know she's got similar story about her son
Her son.
and having that moment of self-reflection and realization, having like an epiphany and so on and so forth.
Yeah. That moment happens. It happens, it happens. Where you're just in the midst of it all and all of a sudden you just switch and go out.
Any wound not treated on time will eventually rot. Can you unpack that and give specific examples so that we can understand?
You know, it's the common thing is any wound that you don't treat, eventually it begins to rot. And as the wound of the body rots, it produces a lot of, a lot of things that are not, good at all. But the wound of the heart as well, if not treated at the right time, it also begins to rot. But the thing with our hearts is when they begin to rot, they produce a lot of bitterness, they produce anger, they produce resentment. And all these things, if not dealt with in the right time, when you go to extents of now it producing bitterness, the bitterness now is projected on the wrong people, on the innocent people, on people that didn't do you the hurt. So basically, I think that for me came about when I got to the realization of me, and then I realized as to how bitter I had become concerning a lot of people, concerning my family, concerning my sisters, concerning my friends, because at one point I felt like a victim. And when you feel like a victim, you feel you need help. You need people to be there to see you through, to do something. And you kind of get to a point where you realize you're surrounded by a lot of people, but it seems like there's no one to talk to. And when you are in that space, that's where you realize there's something that needs to be done. One way or the other, I need to leave this space of being a victim.
And when you say it rots, how does the rot become manifest? How does it show itself?
It starts to show itself in bitterness, in anger, in all sorts of, sometimes it even shows itself in jealousy. For some people, unfortunately, it just shows itself in overworking yourself. Some, when we say overworking yourself, people look at it like, what? Like work is just work. But for some people, they work as hard as they work just to prove a point that they could be somebody. To a head that said you can never amount to anything.
But that's a positive, isn't it?
It's a positive to some extent, but anything that you do and you do out of hurt has a way of because you think of it, people would pour themselves into their work to try and prove a point. Anything that you don't do for you on its own is also causing a hurt and a void in you.
So where is the beauty in that brokenness?
The beauty in your brokenness is found now when you go for your own healing, when you start finding your healing. Because like I mentioned earlier, when you go in a quest, you find yourself. And in the middle of a quest, that's where you get to meet purpose. That's where you get to meet passion. That's where you get to meet things that define and grow and raise you in value.
In all of this, how important is retribution and justice in terms of dealing with people who've caused you the hurt and making sure that there's either retribution in terms of punishment or justice in terms of making sure that, the law of karma is put into effect?
Yeah, I'll have it all in a different way altogether. Most of my clients,
Meaning you want to answer my question?
more especially those that come.
Patricia, I want to answer my question.
I'm going to try to answer it, but
Okay.
I'm going to answer it in a whole different way altogether.
Okay.
Most of my clients, more especially those that come with issues of rape, with issues of being molested, most of the time I'm bold enough to tell them that the justice that you want may not come served in a platter that you expect it to. What's important is you. What's important is you to find your own healing and to find your own next best self. Because one way or the other, if we wait for justice to be served, we might wait a long time. We might even wait forever. But the truth is, you came here to be something.
You mean on this planet?
You came on this planet to be something. And if you can work on on your healing and work on the betterment of you, then basically by you working on the betterment of you, you are saving a lot of good.
But don't you think that there's a lot to be said for retribution? Because I've heard one of our former presidents saying that he's a retributionist by conviction. I think it was Ramohai, meaning that he was talking about the death penalty. So in the case of people who are raping youngsters, for instance, people who are abusing their own family, don't you think that there's a strong argument for saying they should be punished?
They should. That's a must do. They should be punished. But here we're not talking from a point of they. We are talking from a point of view. The things that you have power over.
For you to be healed.
For you, the things that you have power over. You don't have power over what the other person decides. Whether you reported it to the police, you don't have power over what the police guy decides. You have power over you.
To start the healing.
Basically, the best thing is to concentrate on what you have power over. While as you're working on that, concentrate on you.
And you say when you don't heal, you end up bleeding on the wrong people.
On the wrong people.
Give an example.
Yeah, when you don't heal, you end up bleeding on the wrong people. Like I started off saying, we work in organizations. We come from churches. We come from different establishments. And a lot of us, when we come carrying our own different hurts. And the sad thing is, our own different hurts that have now manifested into series of anger, of jealousy, of whatsoever. When we come now, we bleed on the people that didn't hurt us. When we come, we show our anger, we show our jealousy on people that didn't do anything to us. And often at times you realize that if you don't heal, you go out causing more hurts. You go out breaking more hearts. For example, if I can give an example right now, talking of maybe a young girl that got molested at a very young age. And right now, you try to get in a relationship. The moment the relationship got intimate, it reminds you of maybe an uncle that molested you. You walk out of that relationship. That person on their space, they're just innocent. They didn't do you no harm. They're not the person that molested you. By you walking out, you're breaking their heart. You walk into another, you haven't healed. Intimacy reminds you of the uncle that molested you. You walk out. By the time you go for your healing, how many hearts have you broken? You've bled on the people that didn't hurt you.
Literally. And you have actually caused more harm to yourself.
Caused more harm to yourself.
Because maybe that was the right person for you.
And I think one other thing is, one thing that personally saddens me is now when we go to a space of having advocates who are hurting themselves.
How do you mean?
When we have people that now stand up to say, I'm coming out to advocate for women empowerment. I'm standing up to advocate for men empowerment. For men empowerment, I'm standing up to advocate for child rights when they are bleeding themselves. It causes even more harm because basically that means now they project their own hurts and harm into a story that could have turned out different. I've listened to stories where, you know, somebody had to actually address something, but because it's something that they are still bitter about, it goes a whole different way altogether.
You spoke of angry pastors earlier. Is this what you're talking about?
Mr. Mogobe, are you wishing to get me in trouble with pastors? It's not just pastors, but it's just a lot of people out there that are just hurting, that are just bitter, because one way or the other, if you're still hurting and you are there to advocate for something that you're still hurting on, you haven't gotten healing on, then your advocacy is wrongly, it's misplaced.
Okay, you make a point that one has to acknowledge that they are broken. How does one do that? What if we have an ego situation? Because the ego sometimes stops people from making such an acknowledgement.
Yeah, acknowledging that you've been hurt literally means you have to put your pride and your ego aside. And then acknowledge it. It means it's going to hurt, but you need to acknowledge it. Whether you've been raped, my sister, I'm sorry, but intercourse happened. We are not saying it was good that it happened, but you need to acknowledge that it happened, because the moment you acknowledge that it happened, then that's where we get to a state of saying, now what? Now what do I do? Now how do I go forth to find a better way?
You mean some people deny that it happened?
You'll be surprised, but it's true. There are people who would come up for counseling, and they need counseling because they've been raped. And somebody will tell you, but it didn't happen. He just tripped me, he had a knife, pulled up my clothes, but I managed to escape. And then you ask them a few questions, and then from there, that's when they start now tearing up, and they're like, yeah, it happened. But imagine if you were into an office of somebody who is not willing to prompt you further.
And you're saying to me that they should acknowledge it by what? By stating it, or by voicing it, by it coming out of their mouths?
It has to be intentional at a personal level, at a one-on-one level on you. Normally I would say just you in your space. You and your thoughts, you and your intuitions. When you sit and think about it, don't think about it as something that might or that maybe didn't. Think of it as something that happened because it happened. And then when you now stand up to say, I'm going to look for counseling, I'm going to look for therapy, go and look for therapy as somebody that is acknowledging that indeed I'm broken, indeed I'm hurting, indeed I'm bitter, I'm an angry person.
Does it take special skill for you as an advisor, stroke therapist, stroke consultant, to get people to admit? Does it take a special skill, and how do you go about doing it?
I think it's just a passion for people and a passion for helping people. A passion for people says, you know, when you come into my space, you don't leave my space before we figure out a way to help you. That means I have to kind of ask you a few questions. We have to sit and find a solution together. Without that passion for people, then literally, even if you carry a skill without a passion, it doesn't solve much.
So how do you get them to be open up and to open up and to be frank and honest?
So it goes back to a passion for people. That means we sit. If it means we chat a little longer, we chat a little longer. If it means we open up and go to a space where you are comfortable, we open up and go to a space where you are comfortable. Because the moment you can now find comfort in me, that means now you can actually feel free to disclose.
The next point we need to talk about is forgive. And I'm glad you didn't say forgive and forget. Because I have issues about forgetting.
About forgetting.
Yeah, but I think forgive, I agree with it.
Yeah.
But please unpack that one for us.
Forgive. You know, often at times when we talk about forgiveness, people look at it like it's easier said than done. And I've been in that space as well. I've been in that space where I felt like I have a past that is not worth forgiving, where I judged the things that I can forgive based on the hurt that has been caused. Until I got to a realization that forgiveness has nothing to do with how much hurt it has been caused. Because forgiveness is not about the other person. When we say forgive them, we are not saying what they did was right. We're not even saying they're worthy it. We are saying you yourself are worthy the peace. You are worthy that peace.
Can you forgive without talking to the other person?
Forgiveness doesn't mean forgiving you doesn't mean we have to be friends.
Yeah, but I mean, do you have to say, I forgive you, or you can just do it silently and quietly?
You can just do it quietly.
Because there's an argument, isn't there, or a view that out there that says for you to properly forgive, you have to communicate the forgiveness to the transgressor.
I don't think that's much necessary. Of course, yes, for some people they will feel like I need to voice it out so that maybe it gets out of me and the other person knows that I've forgiven them. But one way or the other, some forgiveness that you need to do, you just have to do it by yourself. Because one thing that with my programs, one thing that I often say is before you can forgive any other person, you have to start off by forgiving you. You have to start off by filling you with forgiveness. Because one way or the other, Mr. Mogobe, if I can say, you can never give me what you don't have. Which is why you have to start off by filling you with forgiveness. And then once you've filled you with forgiveness, it becomes easy now to forgive any other person. And forgiving any other person doesn't mean that from there you have to go and be buddy and friends with them. You're just letting go of the hurt they caused.
Is it not actually better for the forgiveness to be effective that you shouldn't actually be buddy with the person? Because if you're buddy, you'll keep remembering. If you keep interacting with the person, you keep remembering the hurt.
You'll be surprised that some people feel a different way about it. Some people
I
feel
want to hear your point of view.
For me to think I've forgiven you, then we just have to be friends. But personally, I feel forgiving somebody doesn't mean we have to be friends. It doesn't mean we have to be close all of a sudden.
Okay, another big point you make is that you have to change your mindset. That's a big title. That's a big topic on its own.
You have to change your mindset. You know, where your mindset is, your lifestyle also follows. Often at times, it's easy, if I could start off by saying, it's easy to talk of change, to talk of healing, to talk of wanting to be a better person. But talking is different from the mindset. I've been in that space where I would talk about the change that I want. I would talk about the Patricia that is filled with peace, filled with happiness. And it seemed like much wasn't happening because talking, I was talking, but mindset-wise, I wasn't speaking the same language. And when we say, change your mindset, we are saying that those little voices, that little chatter, that little voice of intuition that you have, that little conversation that you have with you within you, that voice has to change as well. Because until it changes, then the lifestyle will not change. For you to move to the next dimension, your mindset has to change.
Wow. How do you grab your power back?
Grabbing your power back, often at times we lose our power by thinking that other people have taken our power. And we lose our power by thinking somebody else has taken your power. Grabbing your power back means you search within you. There is the power that we were all created with that stays within the belly of each and every individual. And no matter what we do to you,
some people have surrendered that power.
We can never steal that power from you.
Only you can surrender it.
Only you can. You give it away by thinking people have stolen your power. So grabbing it back means you search within you and you get to an appreciation that I'm powerful beyond measure. Looking within you, looking into that power.
But how do you manifest that? How do you show that you've grabbed it? How do you show that power?
You show that power now when you start acting on intentions. When you say, I need this, and you are intentional about it. And intentions means you don't just talk. You stand up and you go for it.
Isn't there an element of fearlessness there?
There is much of fearlessness in it. Basically, intentions takes you beyond the wall of fear. It takes you into a level of effectiveness that is very much away from comfort zone.
How do you teach a young lady who may have been molested or abused for years by perhaps a relative? How do you teach them to grab their power and to be fearless?
One thing for sure is we start off by making them realize that your power was never taken away from you. You still carry power within you. You are powerful beyond measure. And most of the time I take them through affirmations of realizing their power, a series of affirmations that are consistent of realizing their power. And then from there you get them to now put up their commitment. What do you commit yourself to? What is it that you want to change about your life?
Commit yourself to the change.
And then from there we tell them, now you need to show up. Not for somebody else, but for you. Show up for you every day. Show up for changing you every day, for the betterment of you almost every day. And that is when now somebody wakes up to realize, yeah, I've gotten the power that I thought I lost.
And of course the main message is that I think the main message from what I understand is that you are your own rescue. You are your own knight in shining armor.
You are your own rescue, that's true. You know, it's sad that often at times we wait for somebody else to come and rescue us. And most of the time, I would separate it this way. There are two kind of people. There is the young boy that always got hurt and mommy will come running to come save you. You lose something, mommy tells your sisters, go help them to find it. You lose your way, the girl like, go help him, go help your young brother. And now they are used to being rescued. And now life has had them into their rock bottom, waiting for somebody to come rescue them. And on the other hand, there's this other sister that was always on the rescue. And I think the biggest inspiration that I could say to this sister is, you are not made rescue. Stop going out for the rescue of everybody else. Because at the end of the day, when you work on rescuing you, you become more beneficial to the people that you're trying to rescue now. Because by you rescuing yourself, there's a saying that I like that says, on a tightrope we walk alone. Because one way or the other, if I try balancing with everybody else, chances of me reaching to the middle are very, very low. But if I can balance all the way through, then I can come teach you how to balance all the way through. But the problem is when I want to carry everybody to the healing that I think is possible, then that on its own, it limits me. And it goes back to saying to the person that is seated, to say, nobody is going to come to rescue you. You need to get up and find your rescue for yourself.
So it seems to me that this could be part of a series of speeches or presentations. How did you put it all together?
Like I mentioned earlier on, most of my my programs, they come from my own self-rescue plan. And it's a point where you sit down and you wonder, how did I come from being the girl that was dyslexic, the girl that was an orphan, the girl that was living on government basket, the girl that was orphaned, that was homeless at one point, that was school dropout at teenage, to being the person that is now a TV content producer, the elegant living director, to being nominated top 40 most influential women in West Africa. And you think about it,
in West Africa or in Southern Africa?
West Africa,
because
Ghana,
that's why
Nigeria.
You used to speak there a lot.
Yeah, and that's where you sit down and you realize there's been a shift, there's been a change. And this change, how did it come about? What happened in the process? Because most of the time when I tell people to say, you know, I was said to be dyslexic, couldn't read, couldn't write, did primary in 9 years and still failed it. And all of a sudden somebody finds out I graduated top of my class in Botswana University. They wonder like, what happened?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
all of a sudden become intelligent? And that's where I had to
I'm
sit
curious,
down.
what happened? That transition you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
that's where I had to sit down to find out, okay, fine, what was the rescue plan here? And then how can how can I take this plan and actually put it down so much that it doesn't only become a rescue plan, but it goes out to rescue a lot other people. So that is how all these other plans came about in order for me to try go rescue somebody else.
How do you get to the top 40 most influential women? How did that happen? Tell me the process.
Why did I mention that? Okay. Currently, I sit and mentor hundreds, if I could say, young women in Ghana. I also sit and mentor hundreds, a lot actually, of women in Nigeria.
How do you do that?
It started off with, I have a group that is called the Readers Club. Readers Club, how Readers Club came about is because of the dyslexic and everything. I realized most of the big books that I needed to read, I couldn't read them all the way through. So I started a Readers Club as to getting different people to go read different books. And then from there, they'll come share different summaries of what they got from the book. And that way, in return, I get to know what the book is about. So that was me trying to be intelligent right there. So all of a sudden, the Readers Club started to grow internationally. It started to have people from different countries and different walks of life. And then that growing, that means it came about with different invitations. And different invitations, we got to do Women with Scars in different places, in different countries, to different people, different cultures. And then all of a sudden there was this award that was coming out by Street of Gold and Mice in Ghana. So I believe one of the clients or one of my mentees, I don't know who, nominated me for the award. And I was notified to say I've been nominated for the award. And then there was some voting that needed to be done. And then after the voting, I was part of the top 40. Unfortunately, I didn't get the award, but I got to be top 40 most influential women in West Africa. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And then what message do you have for those young girls who are positioned similarly to you? And when you mentioned dyslexia, I don't know what it is about that ailment or that so-called handicap, because it has produced a lot of powerful people. You know, Richard Branson, Damon John, I don't know who else, a lot of successful people. Now add to that list is Patricia Nkwane, so many people.
You know, the thing with dyslexia is, what I noticed with humanity is when another sense is lessened, another sense is heightened. And as much as with speaking, if you can't hear the sounds of other senses,
it sort of compensates,
get kind of heightened to compensate for what. So basically with dyslexia is, dyslexic people get to be, as much as we can't read, they get to have that pictorial memory that could actually, you tell me something, I'll remember exactly what you said and when you said it and how we got to say that. And basically by virtue of that, when you realize how powerful that is and you realize a way of using that power to your own benefit, it produces such a very, very smart person at the end of the day.
And in terms of the mentorship program you mentioned, you know, you do in West Africa. What about Southern Africa? What about Botswana? What mentorship programs do you have for them?
We do have a mentorship program that we run in our company. So you have to sign up for mentorship. And then when you sign up for mentorship, most of the time I ask that you draft down a motivational letter. Motivational letter is just to explain as to why you need to be part of my mentees. The idea is to try avoid wasting time on people that are not going to commit to the mentorship.
Because it takes effort to write a motivational letter.
Yes, it's for me to try stop wasting time on people that are not going to commit. And currently I also mentor some youth in Zambia and in Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Okay, and you mentor on which subjects? Because I, for instance, mentor on real estate and entrepreneurship.
My mentorship, most of them are into issues of identity, goal setting, and most of them are also in issues of healing. So the bigger part of it is on issues of healing from past hurts and pains.
Okay. You didn't need a degree. You did in psychiatry. You didn't need a degree in psychology to do what you're doing, but obviously you are very active in that field. How do you help people understand that you can still have credibility in an area which you're not necessarily trained for?
We have a program that we've been running with the youth that we call it the Advancing Man. The Advancing Man, we all in it, the bigger part of it is go on a quest. And I personally believe when you go on a quest, either a quest to find out who you are, a quest to find a name for yourself, a quest to find a name for your family. In that middle of the quest, you get to define you. As you define you, that is where you meet up with purpose. That is where you meet up with passion. That is where you meet up with your own value. And as you meet up with those, you realize most of the time they take you far away from what you think academics were taking you. And that is where you find the real you. The you that was never peer pressured to be. The you that was never influenced by the expectations of the society. But the you that you came on this earth to be.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That sounds like music to my ears. Now, do you charge for your speeches, and if so, do corporates take advantage of your wisdom? Now you're available to speak. Under what circumstances?
We do charge for our speaking engagements. We have a program that is called Organizational Miracle. Organizational Miracle is a transformational tool that also includes building the brokenness and a lot of other things. And so far, we've been able to run it in a lot of government departments. Just recently, we were doing it with Ministry of Health. We've been able to do it in private companies as well. So we are just open to bring organizational miracles to any organization out there that is looking to actually shift the people within the organization, because our organizations are filled with a lot of diamonds that are in a row because of the hurts, the pains that we find ourselves in. And because we carry much, it becomes close to impossible for us to produce in line of where the organization's vision is heading.
Wow, this is so powerful. I'm so impressed with all of this. But as we come to the conclusion, you have an opportunity here to ask me a question.
To ask you a question.
Yes. I'm brimming with information. I feel like I'm getting energized here.
Yeah. Earlier on, you talked about when I was talking about forgiveness. I personally thought it's a topic that kind of intrigued you in a way, and I think my question goes back to you to say, you personally, what do you think are the extents of forgiveness?
Yeah, well, I made a comment earlier that, look, I'm glad you didn't say forgive and forget, because sometimes I think if things have been done to you, you can't completely erase them and forget them. And I think it's naive for some, experts and some so-called do-gooders who say to people, forget about that completely, don't even talk about it. Because if you want... If I want you to think about something, I'll say forget about it. For instance, an example, stop thinking about a pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant, Patricia. And I say that's the only thing that comes into your mind.
That comes to your mind,
yeah. So that's why I think it's naive to say people should forgive and forget. I think the idea of forgiveness, it's also a selfish move to say that for you to forgive, it's a form of cleansing for yourself.
For yourself, yeah.
Yeah, so it's important. The Lord's Prayer is very specific. Forgive them their trespasses as we forgive them. forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Which means that it's conditional. You can only be forgiven by God if you are prepared to forgive others who have transgressed against you. That's the way I understand it. I hope I've answered your question.
You have. You've actually answered it in the same kind of understanding that I have for it. Because personally, I think the whole idea of forgetting, it just says something that is wrong altogether. Because one way or the other, even in a space where we feel we have forgiven, we still go to moments where the heart will just surface again. But the idea is to be in a state where you are able to recollect yourself. Every time you feel like you are at your lowest, being able to pick yourself up and being able to keep going.
True. Look at that camera there, Patricia, and kindly leave that viewer with something inspirational. You've said a mouthful already, but I think just a few takeaways as we conclude our time together.
Yes, I think my last take home would be, let's kindly stop trying to be somebody else's rescue. You are not mad rescue, Shem. Go out for your own rescue. Go out for your own healing. And it's very, very necessary for you to find your healing. It is very, very necessary for you to find that transformation. Because as you go out to find it, it might sound selfish when we say stop trying to be the mad rescue. But for you to be beneficial enough to your family, to your society, to your community, is if you can desire and be intentional about going for your healing. Because as you go for your healing, then basically you are showing up an example of hope to somebody else that is actually. And one thing that I have to say to people that have been in a state where you've been able to heal, as you find your purpose, as you find your beauty from your brokenness, now it's your job to keep sending those elevators down there to go and pick more people that are heading into a state of healing. I think that's all that I have to say.
Wonderful. That's really, really great. Can you tell them how you can be reached? There are people who may want to take advantage of your services in your organization, or they may want you to invite you as a keynote speaker. So please share your contacts, please.
Okay. We are called Elegant Living. So you email us at sales.elegantLiving@gmail.com, or you can also call us on 7525-2020. We are called Elegant Living. So email us or leave us a call, then we'll be able to reach down to you.
On social media?
On social media, our social media page is called Elegant Living. On Facebook, on Instagram, we are called Elegant Living. On YouTube, my YouTube link is called Patricia Nkwane. So,
any WhatsApp? Public WhatsApp or business WhatsApp?
The business WhatsApp is the same number, 7525-2020.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patricia. You've been a great guest. You've done wonderful.
You are most welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you.